conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, it's 2:30 on Wednesday, so it is time for our Monday through Thursday 2:30 podcast. This is the podcast where you'll hear the truth and the science about what actually happened in this opioid crisis. Um, and by the way, before I forget, I just wanted to direct your attention to the screen in front of you. That's the confirmation letter. Actually, they're called acknowledgement letters. That's the acknowledgement letter we got back from the FDA that starts the 30-day clock. And again, and you've heard me say this before, and you'll hear me say this again. Why does this matter? Okay, because in order to have a treatment IND, a treatment investigational new drug, which is our plan for how we look to end this ridiculous opioid crisis, is through what's called a treatment IND. In order to have a treatment IND, you have to have a phase 2 or phase 3 clinical trial with the FDA. Okay, that's the pathway to a treatment IND, and then the medication that you have in the phase we'll call it a phase 3 clinical trial. The medication that you have is a medication that can be used in the treatment IND, treatment investigational new drug. And so the medicine that we presented to the FDA for the phase 3 clinical trial was buprenorphine. So once we get our phase 3 clinical trial approved, then we have an open pathway to roll out the treatment IND on a nationwide basis, which it's not going to be easy. It's nothing about this that's easy. Okay. But if there's nobody else working on this, and if we don't do it, we've already got, 5 million, 5 million deaths. We'll have another 5 million deaths. Okay. The name of the book that I'm working on is the pharmaceutical genocide. And we estimate that there are 5 million dead right now, 4 million that have died while they were in what we call the signature disease, what other people refer to as opioid withdrawal. They died of adrenaline toxicity, epinephrine toxicity, norepinephrine toxicity, dopamine toxicity. Those are the catecholamines, the adrenalines, what the layperson knows as adrenaline. There are 3 of them: epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. And when you get high levels of adrenaline, which is what happens when people lose control of their organs. One of the organs you lose control of is the adrenal gland. You get, adrenaline toxicity, and it pushes the heart to pass its limits. I mean, it's that simple. It pushes the heart past its limit. Is there enough adrenaline in your body to kill you? The answer is yes. And it does it by putting the heart in what's called high output heart failure. Heart beats so hard and so fast for so long that it just goes into failure. The pump fails, outstrips its oxygen supply, and the pump fails. And we estimate that 4 million people have died in that manner or a similar manner, and that another million have died from an overdose, opioid overdose, trying to get out of adrenaline toxicity or avoid adrenaline toxicity, trying to get out of high output heart failure or avoid the high output heart failure, trying not to be sick, in other words. And we feel badly for the 5 million that have died. We seem to be the only ones that feel badly about it. And we're not turning our backs on on what we estimate to be about 5 million left. So there it is in front of you. They'll either accept us or turn us down. If they turn us down, we'll reorganize and submit again. And we're not going away, and we're not going to fail. Now that we're working with ADDICT, we have the ability to rapidly turn around and resubmit. We've never had that capability before. Okay, and please, I actually went and looked on the website. There's a place there you can click to send us an email. Send us an email and tell Alex how thankful you are for everything that he's doing. Speaking of which, Alex, we've got to get out an email today to the people who've signed up for the mass tort lawsuit, and mainly just to verify we have their right email address and start the process of bringing people together, because this book is it's supposedly first, second week in December. It's done. It's commercially available. You can buy it. Okay, if I hit all the deadlines, I have promised myself that the Chapter 5 is going to be ready for submission and uploaded to the editors either tonight or in the morning. Can I get it done by tonight? I'm gonna try hard. Chapter 5 has been a real bear for me to write. I've actually rewritten it 3 times. What makes chapter 5 so hard to write is that I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, this is where our people got screwed over. Okay, and I want to make sure I get the story told right. Okay, our people were screwed over by Johnson and Johnson. Our people were screwed over by the DEA, and our people were screwed over by HHS. And I want to make sure I get the story right. Okay, chapter 5 is about how Johnson and Johnson screwed our people over by genetically modifying the poppy plant on the island of Tasmania off the coast of Australia, and then in defiance of U.S. law, began shipping massive quantities of raw narcotic material from Tasmania into the United States. And the reason they were able to do this was, well, first off, the DEA allowed it, but the technicality that allowed it was that the yardstick by which the DEA used to measure narcotic raw material was morphine. Okay, and when Johnson & Johnson genetically modified the poppy plant, they produced a poppy plant that produced no morphine. So they got around the law. So they were able to ship in. I mean, we're talking about massive quantities. 60 metric tons a year. Okay, we're talking about massive quantities. And the DEA allowed it. DEA could have said no, but they didn't say no. They allowed it. And then the DEA allowed them to turn all this narcotic raw material into oxycodone, and the DEA increased the annual aggregate market quota of oxycodone from 5,000 kilos a year in 1997 to over what's the exact number? 237,000 kilos by 2013. So you go from 5,000 to 237,000. Okay, and that was the opioid crisis. That was the here it is, 153,750 kilos in 2013. So that's it. That's the right number. 1997 was 5,250, and 2013 was 153,750. So you go from 5 to 153. Okay, you go from 5,000 kilos to 153,000 kilos in well, that would be 16 years. There's your opioid crisis right there. Okay, DEA could have stopped it. They didn't. Okay, DEA could have prevented them from bringing it into the country, could have prevented them from turning it into oxycodone. They didn't. I figure the DEA got paid off. We'll never have any proof of that. Okay, otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense. That's what I figure happened, was the DEA got paid. Anytime you see something you can't understand, always look for the money. So Johnson & Johnson screws over our people, and that's a story I had to get right. And then obviously the DEA screws over our people by allowing this to happen. Okay, and that's a story I had to get right. And then on top of that, HHS turns around and asks the DEA to reschedule buprenorphine from a Schedule 5 to a Schedule 3. Schedule 5 that has like no rules on it whatsoever. Schedule 3 is pretty tight. Okay, why in the world would HHS want to make buprenorphine harder to get? Okay, that was the big question, and it remains, that's a huge question. First off, nobody knows this. Okay, nobody knows this. Okay, I found the proof on a document in the Federal Register all the way back in 2002. Okay, nobody knows this. This stuff's never been brought out, and it takes a long time for me to do the research, make sure the research is right. I've relied heavily on the Federal Register because it's factual. Okay, and so HHS, Health and Human Services, okay, they petitioned the DEA to make buprenorphine harder to get. And then they successfully pushed this law called DATA 2000, which made it almost impossible to get buprenorphine. Those of you out there who have tried to get buprenorphine, you know how hard it is to get buprenorphine. You've probably wondered, buprenorphine is what makes me feel normal. Why is it so hard to get buprenorphine? And the answer is because of HHS, more specifically, a group within HHS called SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. And you may ask yourself, why in the world would they want to make it more difficult to get buprenorphine? They should make it easier to get buprenorphine. Okay, and the simple answer is because of money. Okay, and we present this in Chapter 5. Again, we found it in the Federal Register. Again, all the way back in 2002. Okay, somebody hired a very expensive law firm, okay, by the name of Hogan and Hartson. They're now Hogan and Lavelle. This is a top law firm in Washington, D.C. Okay, this is a very expensive law firm in Washington, D.C. And according to the Federal Register back in 2002, somebody hired them. They didn't give their name. They remain anonymous. They don't identify themselves. And they tried to get buprenorphine even all the way down to a Schedule 2. Okay, and the only clue we have is, and it's in the book, is where it says, hey, this is going to financially impact the methadone clinics. Okay, so that, and you wouldn't have known this, but HHS and SAMHSA, they own the methadone clinics. So who cares what happens to the people? Who cares what happens to the genetically damaged? Who cares what happens to our people? But oh my God, let's make sure we don't lose any revenue on the methadone clinics. Okay, that's why buprenorphine's harder to get. Okay, that's why, and it's right there in the Federal Register. You don't have to believe me. Okay, you don't have to believe me at all. And that's the point of and that's why it takes me so long, is I'm not asking anybody to believe me. I'm researching and presenting the facts. And quite frankly, when you present the Federal Register, the big government book, when you present that to people, you run the risk of boring them to sleep. Very few things are more boring than the Federal Register, but that's where a lot of these answers are. So, all right, Alex, we got to get an email out today. Everybody, we'll hold here for today. Everybody have a great afternoon. Have a great evening. We appreciate you listening to our podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us. Don't forget to post this podcast on your social media, everybody else's social media. Let's get the word out there. And I'm going to get back to work. And I'm so hopeful that on tomorrow's meeting, tomorrow's podcast, I am so hopeful that I'm going to be able to say that Chapter 5 has been uploaded to the editors. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.